3, 2, 1, and we're live.
There we go.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are on this beautiful planet of ours, because we have a global following. Welcome to the second edition of the More Insights and Strategy IT Talk Podcast. I am Matt Kimball, and I am joined by the amazingly handsome, amazingly smart Jason Andersen, VP Principal Analyst. Jason, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. We're having a good day.
Okay. Is it cold where you are?
It could be colder. It's been okay. It's been all right up here up north this week. It's been all right.
All right. Yeah. It's like spring down here in Texas. So Jason's in Boston, or just north of Boston for all of you who care. He's in the lovely Hampstead or hamlet of Newburyport.
Newburyport, yeah.
Down in Dripping Springs, Texas. Two cute sounding towns. Hey, we got a lot to talk about today, Jason. Lots and lots. But before we jump into topics, we have to throw out this silly disclaimer. Not silly, but disclaimer nonetheless. Look, what we talk about is IT and IT-related topics. We have a lot of fun. We're going to talk about companies. We're going to talk about technology. We are not in any way, shape, or form giving you financial advice. If you use our input and our information as a basis for you making investments, shame on you, and shame on whoever gave you access to the internet. So do not take what we say as investment advice. This is just our opinions, and we're having a fun time talking. That's it. And let's move on from there. So, hey, today we got a bit to talk about. We're going to talk, you want to hit on specialized agents, kind of what you're seeing from GitHub.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about some stuff I'm seeing out of Lenovo. Let's jump in. What are you talking about with special agents, like CIA agents, FBI agents? What are you talking about there, Jason?
So we're seeing a lot of activity the last year or so from everybody making agents. And it's kind of a funny word, because now there's just so many different types of agents, and nobody's really sat down to think through, like, it's just an incredibly broad field now. So you've got people who are writing agents that are, multi-step business processes in the enterprise to do something like, say, do financing underwriting or something like that. And then you have very simple agents, which are like, hey, I want you to write me an Instagram post and make 600 of them all different colors or something, right? So there's this huge spectrum of what an agent can be. Mm-hmm. And but what's happened in the kind of common vernacular when enterprise folks look at it is they hear the word agent and they think with an agent that ships with a product, they think that there's like an agent to do it, right? Yep. And what's been pretty cool is that some people are starting to go, well, no, it's not really, don't think of it as an agent like that one resource that you go to for everything. Actually, think of it as a palette of tools you can use, such that we can set them up to do the right job. And the reason for that is kind of, I think there's two reasons driving it. The first reason is that agents aren't quite smart and efficient enough yet, and models aren't quite smart and efficient enough yet to know when to invoke a partner agent, right? So if you give something to, like, say, a general purpose agent, it may not be smart enough to know, you know what, I need to hand this to this other agent who's specialized at this. So there's not enough smarts in the agents yet to do that. And there is some smarts, like, like with Gemini, if you put something in about a graphics, it knows to go to Nano Banana, but in a really kind of specific sense in the enterprise, it's not quite there yet. Yep. The second piece of it is that when you start to build specialized agents, you can actually train models and make them work in a very specific way to get the best possible outcome. Mm-hmm. You really started to see this kind of manifest, like, in the networking world, where they started to build specialized agents for specialized tasks, like, router configurations, and they started to really get kind of deep into it. But now we're starting to see it hit the user side, and especially in the world of developers. And I think one of the companies that's doing a really nice job with this lately is GitHub, right? Mm-hmm. GitHub kind of started out with the idea of, hey, we're going to have Copilot. Copilot was like a assistive technology, which would, like, look at your code in line and do the work. And that was nice. And then they moved up to this idea last year of, hey, wouldn't it be great to kind of identify a task you want GitHub to do for you and just hand it off as if you were handing it off to another member of your team. Like the process in the UI was effectively the same. And it was that one big agent kind of idea, and it worked pretty well. But now what you're starting to see happen is more and more agents are starting to show up in the palette. And one of them that came out in the last week was actually a .NET unit testing specific agent. So if you're writing code in .NET and you actually want to start to do quality assurance with AI, you hand it off to that specific agent, and it'll actually start to build out those test cases for you in a way that's specifically tuned to the .NET language, not any language. And it's also specifically tuned to parameters and or models of knowledge that are for testing, right? Versus coding or deployment or something else. So we've actually seen GitHub do a few of these, and I think they're going to continue on this track for a while. We're also seeing, just kind of in the very latest news, like AWS is starting to maybe even do something with this, where their tooling was really good for their Kiro tooling was really good for brand new applications, but wasn't as good for like going up and taking the Kiro tool against a existing application and say, go fix this broken thing. Because as I said in an article this week, a lot of these development agents are like robotic toddlers. You tell them to do something, and then there's unintended consequences. So what AWS just did is they now have a bug fix specific set of agents for going into an application. So instead of saying, build me a new app, you're saying, hey, go fix these specific things in this application. And by the way, don't break anything else, right? So this is kind of where we're kind of state of the world, where we went from this notion of assistive technology to being able to hand off work and delegate it to somebody that was more of a general practitioner. And now what we're getting to is this next phase, which is really cool, which is, all right, now I can hand off this work to a team, if you will, a small team of of specialists that are actually now able to solve my problem, and in all likelihood solve that problem in a way that was better than handing it off to the general practitioner agent.
Hey, let me ask you a question. I'm going to take this and think about this from like a not from a software development perspective, and that's take it kind of in a different area, because what you're talking about is something that I see a lot of companies talk about. Agentic AI driving IT operations. So, today I have a storage admin, storage admin team. There are 12 people on it. I have a server admin team. There are 12 people on it, so on and so forth, right? And actually HPE did a really good job of kind of showing this at Discover last year, conceptually, just conceptually, around, okay, those 12 people that are performing, a lot of overlap between them, but maybe I have 12 specialists that are doing, focusing on different areas. I'm going to turn that into 12 specialized or 12 agents, right? A master agent and then a bunch of sub agents. Compute, same thing. Networking, same thing, right? When do you see kind of this kind of, specialized agent kind of deployment or creation and availability coming on the IT ops side, number one? And number two, do you think there is a place, or is this a function of APIs and MCP servers for building connective tissue between communication between specialized agents? So I have HPE specialized agents, Dell specialized agents, Lenovo specialized agents, getting them to talk to each other. Is that just a function of MCP, or do you think there's yet another specialized agent that kind of brings all this together?
Well, it's actually an interesting debate, because there's so the short answer is MCP really is more of an access type of thing. So it enables you to access a service or a data set or an application. So what you really need is there's this kind of emerging thought called agentic orchestration, right? There's IBM products for this, but it's an interesting argument because I don't think the problem's been fully solved yet. If you think about like orchestration in the kind of old school sense, like if you looked at a product like what we saw with the early days of cloud orchestration, things from VMware, things from Red Hat, it was you programmed a set of business logic in, and you said, well, if X happens, then you built around alerts or event-based stuff. And so there's people who are working on that. Like I'd say the IBM one kind of has that more event-driven type of architecture for agent orchestration. There's some people who are saying, well, why not have an agent that is the orchestrator agent that figures it out, like takes a look at the problem. And there are other technologies out there like evaluation models and things that are coming along that suggest that that might be the way it goes. What's missing right now is that component, right? That idea of whether it's event and logic driven or it's LLM driven. Mm-hmm. The idea of kind of linking these things together and making it so these handoffs happen smoothly and the data gets passed between them well is still kind of not there yet, right? And, so that's why you have it. What you're starting to see now is the specialized agents coming, and they'll be surfacing. Like the GitHub example is perfect. It shows up in the GitHub UI. You got a palette of agents. At some point, it'll swing backwards to the agent, who will then orchestrate it for you and figure out the best way to get it done. We're just not quite there yet. And I do think that in IT ops, particularly, that's a really good thing, right? Because that'll help kind of not only streamline work, but I actually see it as a way to build the bridge between these siloed organizations, right? Like, if I'm in the data group and I can make it easier for my developers to access the data and or maybe even do some of the operations work on my databases, that's all goodness if I can make that easy, right? And automate that for them, as opposed to them just popping a ticket in and I have to then go do the work myself, right? So I do see it as kind of a nice way to bridge between teams, whether that's an IT team or a marketing team or a sales team or whatever.
Sure. It just feels to me like autonomy is autonomy, right? And autonomy means fully hands off. We were talking about, I'm talking late 90s. We were talking about rules engines and kind of the event-driven orchestration and event management. It's like that. It just feels like if I'm truly going to embrace this autonomy and autonomous enterprise, then I'm fully embracing it, right? And
way back in my JBoss days, that was a big movement, like with middleware, was event-driven everything. And you saw it with like open source projects like Drools, which actually that team was an amazing team of engineers, brilliant guys. And the thing about that is that, to your point, you use the word truly. And it's so funny because when you said that, I was like, I got to meet some people who've actually done that level of automation using rules engines like Drools, or even RPE, robotic process execution tools. Hey, look, the companies that have that, that have invested in it, put the time in and really nailed their process, those folks have spent millions of dollars and it works, right? The rest of us don't have that luxury. And in a lot of ways, what these AI agents are doing when it comes to business process automation is just reducing the barriers to use it. Because it's just that much easier to do it in natural language versus sitting down and actually really figuring it out and writing the code around it. So it's in a lot, to your point, is that some of these ideas have been around for a long time, but now the barriers are coming down in such a way because of reasoning models largely.
And I think we're going to get to the point where we get to that end state. The companies that have spent millions of dollars on it today are far ahead of the curve, but I think we get to the point where it's just kind of baked in,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Cool stuff.
Yeah, very cool stuff. All right, quickly, Lenovo, everybody's favorite ISG company. I'm just kidding. Hey, so I wanted to hit on something I've been kind of thinking about and talking about for some time, and that is, so Lenovo had their earnings. Was it last week or the week before? I can't keep track of weeks anymore. I'm getting too old, but they really strong earnings overall, record earnings from a company perspective, 22 billion, up 18%. Great. ISG, their infrastructure solutions group, also delivered its strongest quarter ever. 5.2 billion in revenue, up 31%. AI pipeline of 15.5 billion, liquid cooling revenues up 300%, like really strong numbers, right? And really good stuff going on. And I've been playing around with Lenovo has always been really strong in two markets. They've been strong in hyperscale because they have this thing called ODM Plus, where they can deliver OEM-like quality servers to the largest of the large through their supply chain and manufacturing process. and they've done really good in HPC. HPC, where you're not just racking servers, but you're having to go in and create, huge clusters that are tightly integrated, highly performant, highly resilient, so on and so forth. Those are two areas where they've done really, really good. In fact, from a percentage perspective, they're the number one platform on the top 500 supercomputing list, which is pretty impressive, right? But they have not been able to break into enterprise. It's dominated by Dell, and to a lesser extent, HPE. Cisco has a footprint. Lenovo is a distant third to Dell and HPE. Part of it's the heritage of the company. Part of it is that weird handoff between IBM and Lenovo. And part of it is just, building kind of that go-to-market muscle that kind of establishes that footprint. So along comes AI, right? And as we know, along with disruption comes opportunity. And we also know that when I'm trying to deploy AI servers out into the marketplace or into the enterprise, it's not like racking and stacking servers. It's much like deploying an HPC system.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going with this.
The similarities are there for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really interesting opportunity for Lenovo. Here's what I like about what they've done over the last couple of years. So they've always had by the way, that's a market that is very strongly channel driven, right? Even if it's not the CDWs, it is to some extent. It's also the WWTs, the SHIs, that have a very strong enterprise selling motion. And Lenovo has done an amazing job of selling their client parts into the enterprise through these channels. Over the last couple of years, they've aligned their organization. So they have this thing, I think it's called Lenovo One, where they sell client and server together, go to market together, so on and so forth. Really good movement. Number two, really good organizational changes in that they've brought in a new head of ISG that comes from Dell and drove the server business. Ashley, who is an amazing guy. They have a sales organization with Matt Zielinski and Vlad Rozanovich, who come from AMD and have sold into enterprise forever. They've realigned their ISG management team with Scott Tees and others that have that kind of HPC and IT kind of view of the world. So they've aligned everything up to be successful in enterprise. And I think this AI disruption really puts them in a good position, because if I'm a CIO, I'm not looking at, my new data center or data estate to be exactly what it was before. I'm looking at the world differently. And I think Lenovo has an opportunity to capitalize on that. Their huge AI backlog is evidence of that, but I'm kind of curious over the next few months or few quarters to see how that translates into actual enterprise business. Their revenue in enterprise has been steadily increasing. I'm hoping to see a much larger kind of jump over the next couple of quarters as Flynn Malloy and his team in marketing start to kind of drive to this. Because again, this is not your grandfather's or grandmother's enterprise IT market. It is completely different, and everything is just lined up for them. I'm going to share on that and kind of get your thoughts.
Just to kind of pile on there, but if you think about like what's going on in AI data centers right now, is that first off, you're right, the template is different. But I think the other thing is even something as simple as the definition of a computer is different, right? I mean, think about just look at what Nvidia is shipping these days, right? There was a time when Nvidia shipped us, and they talked about, hey, here's our little 4U server that we put in that looks like every other server. But now it's 2 racks with cooling and all this other stuff that's more than just pizza boxes or whatever. And, to your point, the software required to manage that's different. The cooling and the environmentals are completely different. So when the hyperscalers are now, they don't think about computers. They look at the building as the computer. They look at the data center equals computer.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of where we're going a little bit for a certain, at least a significant portion of the footprint. So you need a different kind of partner to help guide you through that. And, that's a good thing. The other thing, to your point, which I think is, I hate to say it, but when you look at a 3-year horizon versus a 10-year horizon, the technology is what's going to allow you to talk about 3 years out. The go-to-market motion is going to be the next 3 years. And the truth is that if you when you were talking about Lenovo with their place in HPC and with their place in these technologies, it's like, that's a company that was addicted to big transactions.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, they wanted to sell $10 million deals. They didn't want to be in a position where they're selling a few servers for Project X, right? Which is where Dell excels, right? So I think that it's really difficult to change a go-to-market mindset to a different type or a different class of transaction. Yep. And to your point, they've had to hire people who are good at those types of transactions in order to make it happen. Otherwise, you wouldn't see the behavioral shift that would grease the skid, so to speak, for all the technology advancements they have.
Yeah, and that's what makes this interesting, is I think they brought in the right folks.
Yeah,
they've had the portfolio, but they brought in the right folks. And then you have a market on the other side that now has to think and behave more like those HPC customers and more like those hyperscale customers. You can't just go buy those servers you've always been buying, right? And it is rack scale, it is data center scale kind of compute. It's going to be fun to watch. And this is AI is wholly disruptive. And I think as these OEMs go out, whether it's Dell, HPE, Lenovo, Cisco, and start selling into the market, they can't just talk AI factory, because it's all the same metal built around the same, shaped around the same GPUs, right? Or chips, right? You have to find differentiation. Manufacturing is interesting, and their SSG, their services group, is an interesting way as well.
And sourcing is interesting because, I mean, if you look at the fact that Google's now saying they'll sell TPUs outside of their data centers.
Yep.
That's interesting. ARM is in the CPU space, especially, but like, you're going to see ARM do more with it. It's this whole idea of these, 2 or 3 folks, being the dominant player in one space. I mean, even like in AI with, it's going to be what you have with inferencing versus the training is going to look completely different 2 years from now. So, I mean, even Nvidia is saying that now, right? So with their acquisition of Grok, and as and just to plug, in 2 weeks, I'll be heading out to do something really different. I'm going out to Synopsys to look at how they're using AI for their workflows, right? You were going to go, but now I'm going. And so we're going to kind of change the scope of what we're looking at. But Synopsys is out there saying, hey, look, there's going to be a lot more companies out there designing chips from scratch for special purpose, right? So, that's their big bet. So I do think there's some pretty cool stuff going on in the whole space overall in terms of, you're not going to see a Wintel dominant world or an Nvidia dominant world forever. Right.
No, I did, and I'll draw a quick analogy to that before we move on. But I remember back in the 80s when I was first starting to understand kind of the engineering space and the shift. We went from kind of analog to digital, where analog circuits ran the game, and digital started to come in, and we started to look at the concept of black boxes versus going in and looking at the output of a is it a 5 volt or is it a 2 volt or a 1 volt or a 0.5 volts coming off this thing and pulling out gyroscopes. It changed the mindset of how people looked at technology and how people consumed. And we continue to do that. When Intel came in and disrupted, the big iron Unix-based systems, and everyone said, it's never going to take over. And you're always, Unix will always have its place with databases and mission critical. 2 years later, it was a Wintel world. And I'm not saying that ARM is going to play or alternative architectures are going to play a similar role, but there's less of an affinity. Thank you to folks like Jason Andersen who push open software. There's less of an affinity for x86 versus RISC versus something else, right? And I think, as we consume at the rack scale level, at the data center level, we care less and less about those underlying architectures. And that's what makes this world so blessed interesting and so fun to watch. But
well, the other thing is the timing thing. I just put out a piece about how to save money with agent, meaning, if you're deploying agents, there's a lot of different tools you can use to save money. So that's out on our website. It's a 2-part little series I wrote. It's pretty cool. But the other thing I said in that is this might be a time where you need to get cozier with your vendors. So for years it was best of breed, right? Like you mentioned open source, and open source kind of opened the door towards best of breed solutions again, because so many things were commoditized. But now AI is kind of forcing that discussion to be tighter with fewer vendors again.
Yep.
But over time, it just ebbs and flows, right? As the maturity of the technology comes along. Once everybody kind of gets to a certain level of competency with AI and the vendor space and the customer space, you'll see, again, the commoditizers coming, whether that's open source or Dell or whoever.
Yep.
But then, it kind of ebbs and flows. And we're kind of in this period right now where it's kind of in between, because there's so many choices for best of breed, yet there's such a demand for education that vendor affinity is also strong.
Yeah. I think it's going to be fun. Sorry, that's my oldest dialing in and trying to disrupt us. I think it's going to be fun to watch. But I do what you're saying. I think that strategic landing zone is 3 to 5 years out, right? Enterprise is still in a huge kind of education mode, and the likes of Dell and Lenovo, who we were talking about, their job is to create that preference today so that they get acquired tomorrow. It's fun to watch.
You said you had one more thing, and we're running low on time, buddy.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so we could talk about this all day long. My one more thing I want to hit on is we need to make note of this, and that is today, February 20th, marks the first preseason game, spring training game for the Boston Red Sox. They're doing their traditional game against Northeastern, and they kick off against the Minnesota Twins tomorrow. So I know you're a Red Sox fan.
Yes.
You got to tell me what you're thinking. Are you optimistic? Are you look at the hot stove season, and now you look at preseason or spring training? What are you thinking? Am I putting you on the spot?
First off, I'm going to say go Huskies, because anytime the college team takes on the pros, I want that college team to win. I don't care who it is. That's what I want. So I want the Huskies to win. Go Huskies. But what I'll say is I think it's tough. I think they've addressed some – I don't think they've addressed some of their biggest challenges, to be honest. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily, because I just think some of the holes that they haven't been able to fill all the holes they needed to in the team. So I do think I think they will improve, though. I think they'll play a little better.
You're such a contrarian.
Well, I don't know, man. Baseball's so hard. It's such a long season. And look, and there was another team down in Foxborough that completely blew all of our minds this year. We had no idea that I didn't know if we were going to make the playoffs, and all of a sudden we got butts kicked in the Super Bowl, but hey, we got to the Super Bowl. So,
that's right.
But right. Yes, as you pointed out, I'm much more interested in the fate of the Red Sox right now than the fate of the Patriots. So,
well, I'm excited. It's a little side story. My youngest was actually recruited by Northeastern, and one of the reasons he was interested in them is because they played the Red Sox every year, and he thought it was a dream of his to do that.
So and I'll give you another one. So Shane Smith, who plays in Chicago, is a Boston kid, and in his rookie season went to the All-Star game, and he went to the Governor's Academy, and while he was working his way up through the minors, he was the coach of the Thirds basketball team at Governors, which my son, the world's worst basketball player, was one of his coachees. And if you want to see people go mental, go to Governors when the Red Sox play against Shane Smith.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. That's awesome.
I'm
a little bit more optimistic on the Red Sox than you are. They did not bring a big bat, and I agree with you on that. But I think Bregman was going to be a bad signing for them over the course of the year. He faded at the end of last year horribly.
I know.
He's old, dude. He's old.
I know.
But they have great pitching. They've got so much young talent. And I think you and I, as Boston fans, we're so effing spoiled on the amount of success we've had that anything short of a World Series win, an NBA ring, Stanley Cup win.
Your point about the youth is a good one though, because I used to watch Worcester really extensively when I lived near Worcester, and I got to tell you, some of the guys that have come up and through from Worcester have actually been really good quality in the pros. They're doing a good job. Their farm system is back online. I think they lost their way with the farm system a bit, and I do think that the youth could play like last year. I think the youth could come in and play and surprise us. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. All right. We'll take your caution. That's all right. And we'll take your optimism. I thank you. Hey, any last thoughts before we get going? Do you have travel coming up?
So I mentioned we're going to see Synopsys in 2 weeks, but I got a piece that's working its way through now about SaaS apocalypse. Hopefully next time we talk, I'm going to get into the numbers. I actually did a tiny little bit of analyst data science on this. So I want to talk people through it next time. So little teaser for next time, little teaser for future bit of research, but it was inspired by our lovely Presidente, Erin, who I was on a call with her yesterday. We were just handballing ideas, and I literally led to a post that got written in 45 minutes. So I'm excited to talk about SaaS apocalypse next.
Right on, man. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm going to be at Vast Forward, Vast Data, their first customer conferences next week. Amazing company. I'll be there, and I'll be kind of tweeting on that. And then after that, it's GTC, it's Oracle, it's MediaTek. The whirlwind starts. So
I've only got Synopsys in March, and then I've got Google and Salesforce in April.
Right on, man. Excellent.
Very excited. They're going to be good shows.
Hey, listen, before we go, I have to start with what I started. We had a fun conversation, talked, bullishly about some companies. Do not take anything we say as financial advice. I hate the fact that I have to repeat it, but I do. And again, shame on you if you do take what we say as financial advice. Jason, have an awesome weekend, and we will talk again in 2 weeks. And go Red Sox.
Go Red Sox.